From horrifying Hollywood cliches of disgusting cafeterias to the slightly more palatable offerings at real-world commissaries, prison meals are a hot topic for the morbidly curious. But with so many terrible true crime dining tales, one has to wonder, is prison food really that bad? Well, today we're going behind the bars to find out what prisoners actually eat. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History Food channel. After that, please leave a comment and let us know what other topics you would like to hear about. Now grab your orange jumpsuit, because here we go. You might be shocked to hear this, but historically speaking, society doesn't have the best track record when it comes to nourishing the incarcerated. During the 1600s, the quality of prison food was entirely based on that sweet, sweet coin. Because for the incarcerated lords and lads of ye olde England, each and every meal came with a price. While certified lords often paid the least, knights and so-called gentlemen had to pony up a significant weekly allowance in order to eat. But whether you were a commoner paying his 5 pence, or a disgraced knight dropping a tenner, almost everyone seemed to agree that the fresh bread, wine, and community-donated meats were pretty good if you could afford it. By the mid-1800s, London prisons finally began providing food for the incarcerated without charging them. This was certainly an upgrade for penniless prisoners, but the food dipped to a quality previously reserved for those in dungeons, which is to say, real bad. The meals were mostly scraps of meat, soup, and potatoes. And how much you got depended on who you were. For prisoners awaiting trial, serving hard labor, or even expecting mothers, food was doled out in generous portions. Those who simply served their time without physical demands were given sensible rations, and prisoners who were considered vagrants or repeat offenders, well, they didn't do so hot. Across the seas, colonial Americans treated their prisoners similarly. You may have heard that American prisoners of this era regularly dined on lobster and salmon fillets, but the reality was far more grim. Yes, specific seaside prisons may have occasionally thrown some freshwater bugs into the stew, but colonial criminals were far more likely to get salted meats, beans, and the dreaded hardtack, a thick, bready cracker that lasts longer than a Twinkie. Ironically, while most people probably imagine all prison food was terrible and underserved, one Western facility had a storied reputation for the opposite. That's right, on the craggy shores of Alcatraz, a literal island of a prison, inmates were purposefully overstuffed with unhealthy foods. In an experiment, Alcatraz prisoners were kept overnight and sedated in an effort to ease tensions. And without proper exercise or room to even move around, many prisoners suffered critical health complications. No wonder Clint Eastwood wanted to escape so badly. Of course, there are exceptions to any prison yard rules. And when it comes to food, not all historical jailhouses were so lacking. Japanese prisons, for instance, known throughout history as truly terrible places to be, are not without their culinary charms. Served bountiful bowls of rice and barley, grilled fish, and a side of vegetables or noodles, prisoners of Japan at least had healthy meals on their minds. So, just to recap, if you're a foodie and you're going to be incarcerated for a while, commit your crime in Japan. These days, prison food looks a lot different, but you're probably not going to want to serve any of it at your wedding. Yes, prison food TikToks and trendy prison meal tutorials have emerged, but the reality of daily incarceration is viral in all the wrong ways. For example, while 94% of prisoners in 2020 reported they did not receive enough food to feel full, the vast majority of those same prisoners also suffered from foodborne illnesses. You may wonder, how is that possible? Isn't this stuff regulated? Well, it is. Local, state, and federal prisons are all legally required to serve their inmates breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. But while this frequency and consistency is certainly better than prison rations of the past, the same may not be said of the quality. That's partially because the standard cost of a prison meal is low, suspiciously low. Most health officials agree it costs less than $10 a day to keep a person healthy. But most states spend only $3 daily on an entire day's worth of food for each prisoner. So some states, like Oklahoma, have somehow paid less than the national average. But even Maine, long considered a leader in prison food quality, only spends about $4 daily per prisoner. But what do those dollars actually buy? Well, for breakfast, most inmates can expect hot oatmeal and toast with jelly, although occasionally, porridge is replaced with eggs. For lunch, prisoners are served burgers of their patty choice, with a side of spuds. Grilled chicken is sometimes subbed for the carb-heavy burgers, but in both cases, the protein source is often of negligible quality. Dinners consist of various grilled mystery proteins and greasy pizza slices, mashed potatoes and starchy gravies, and boiled veggies and candied fruits, all of which must meet each local, state, or federal requirement for sodium and overall nutrition. Some states like Florida call for less than, say, New York, but none of them really amount to much in the way of nutritional value. During various snack times, prisoners are also allowed to visit the commissary, where they can spend their hard-earned money on treats with arguably even less benefit to the body. Someone out there might be asking, but can't they just eat fruits and vegetables? No. In most American prisons, fresh fruits and vegetables are banned to control illegal alcohol production, a necessary part of any balanced diet. These crucial components are instead canned, doused in syrup, or brined. So much for the food pyramid. In fact, even those states are now required to offer vegan options to any prisoner demanding a meat-free diet. The veggie options are anything but fresh. And despite recognition of religious restrictions, such as kosher foods, the quality of such meals is as bad as any other offering. That's because the volatility of prison life means that even state-regulated demands often go untended. Some states have made strides to provide fresh foods. Maine, for example, provides ample farming programs for inmates that benefit the prisoners themselves. By making the majority of their meals from scratch using farm-fresh foods, Maine prisoners are the exception to the rule. And for what it's worth, perhaps those low food cost averages might just make sense when it comes to prison farm food. But if you thought prison food had moved past the medieval times, let us introduce you to Neutraloof, a rectangular mash of unsavory veggies and petrified beans. Neutraloof is the stuffing of nightmares. Heavy, thick, and nutritious, only in the basest sense, Neutraloof was often used as literal punishment for those in solitary confinement. Some states have moved to ban it entirely from the menu. But for some prisoners, Neutraloof is still part of their daily grind. When it comes to the quality of modern prison food in America, there is one name that should be on the tip of everyone's tongue. But in reality, have you ever heard of Aramark? Also known for sports stadium chow, academic cafeterias, and even hospital foods, the company has had such an influence on the business of prison food that it's basically become a monopoly. Not content to run just typical prison cafeterias, Aramark also bought out the entire commissary company, meaning that no matter what prisoners consume, from mystery meat to beef jerky, it's all coming from the same source. To some, that may seem like a conflict of interest. If Aramark wants to maximize revenues, perhaps they purposefully produce bad food at chow time to later rake in that sweet, sweet jailhouse commissary money from Aramark-sponsored ramen or candy bars. Once individual states and county governments started outsourcing their prison food to companies like Aramark, they revealed to the public a billion-dollar industry. And when it comes to food quality, Aramark and its peers squeeze out profits because their diners, prisoners, are, well, held prisoner. From foreign objects lodged in foods to rotten cartons of blast chiller proteins, there are plenty of stories surrounding prison food. And due to illegal cell phone camera footage, the public is being made aware of how bad things can be behind bars. Tins of food marked as not for human consumption, long expired product, and even rodent droppings. Even some prison staff are feeling the burn. Some fear that poorly prepared meals will actually incite violence and riots. Given all this, some of you might wonder what you can do to improve food choices in prison. Fresh food was often donated or brought into prisons of yesteryear, so can't you do the same? Well, not quite. While a select few prisons scattered across the Americas do allow for certain special visitations, most outside food is completely banned. Though perhaps not quite as literal as baking a nail file into a pie, outside foods pose a variety of risks to staff and prisoners alike. So you probably can't bring food to prisoners yourself. But there are other ways. In terms of charities, the Farm to Corrections Project has worked to help bring fresh foods to the tables of inmates across California. Working in unison with the Department of Corrections, this organization raises money and provides nutritional benefits to prisoners. The Show Me State of Missouri also embraces fresh food cultivation with a statewide garden project. Interestingly, prisoners themselves sometimes sell food to raise money for charities. In 2022, 3 California prisons raised nearly $40,000 to be distributed to different recipients. And there is the Delancey Street Restaurant, a training program and restaurant actually in the California State Prison Solano. Operated by prisoners, the restaurant only caters to other prisoners, staff, and educators from nearby facilities. And the food is fresh, nutritious, and maybe because their labor costs are zero, affordable. All of which leads to the old adage that probably exists somewhere. If you want food choices that are healthy and plentiful, stay out of jail. So what do you think? What should prison food be like? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out these other weird history food videos.